Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 60th edition of Data Bytes, hosted by Public Digital. I'm Gavin Freegard, and it's wonderful to see so many of you this evening here at Broadway House and online for the final Data Bytes of 2025. Oh, that was the right response. Thank you. It's a good start. But let's start in the usual way. Hands up if you've been to Data Bytes before. Welcome back. Hands up if this is your first Data Bytes. Welcome. Now, I'm really looking forward to tonight, not only because we have a brilliant lineup for you, but also because it will make a nice change from being obsessed with traitors and faithfuls. I'm sure many of you have been following it, watching the great and the good pointing fingers and trying and spectacularly failing to pick out the plotters. I'm sure the government's new immigration policy, the forthcoming budget and next year's local elections will put an end to all of that leadership speculation. Let's start with some housekeeping. We are on the record and are being live streamed, obviously. If you're on social media, the hashtag is PDDataBytes, and you can put your questions to our speakers via Slido, bit.ly/databyte60, all lowercase, if you're not already there. If you're here in the room, you can, of course, raise your hand to ask a question as well. What does Data Bytes do? We aim to put good work involving data, especially in the public sector, on the record so we can all learn from it. Provide a space for the different data communities in and around government to come together, and bring to life what better data can do for all of us, whether we think of ourselves as data people or not. How does Data Bytes work? This evening, you're going to be treated to 4 presentations on interesting data projects. Each of our speakers will have 8 minutes to present. Yes, just 8 minutes. There are 8 bits in a byte, hence 8 minutes in a data byte. Each speaker will then take questions for 8 minutes. Yes, just 8 minutes. And then we move on to the next speaker. So 4 presentations of 8 minutes, each followed by questions for 8 minutes. You can watch the previous 10 Data Bytes at Public Digital, including last month's AI special, at bit.ly/PDDataBytes, all lowercase. The first 49 Data Bytes were hosted by the Institute for Government. You can watch those at bit.ly/IFGDataBytes, capital IFGDB. That includes Data Bytes 45 in September 2023, featuring Penny, who you'll hear from again shortly. So what's happened since we last met? Well, one theme of my intros this year has been the turnover of data leadership in government. That's been true at ministerial level. At the September reshuffle, only Lord Valence remained in post. But it's been even more pronounced with senior officials, with many big positions still not filled. But since last time, one of them has been. Is that it? Yes, we have a new government chief data officer, Amy Smith, formerly director of data at the Metropolitan Police. In its continued commitment to transparency, the government hasn't actually announced that on gov.uk yet. Now, long-time Data Bytes fans, and I'm told there are a few of you, will know that we've long hoped for a government chief data officer, even writing a sea shanty about it. So let's wish the new CDO luck and hope she stays in post longer than her predecessors. Now, one of the big political stories of the last few weeks unfolded on the day of our last Data Bytes, with Plaid Cymru beating Reform to win the Senedd by-election in Caerphilly, a result that might give some clues to next year's Senedd elections across Wales. Read this chart carefully. Yeah? I know, it's cheesy. Now, it's quite a change from the last election, with Labour dropping to a distant third, having held the seat ever since the first devolved election in 1999. But Labour haven't just dominated the Senedd constituency. If we look at the Westminster seat since its creation in 1918, you'll see Labour has always won Caerphilly, so it's a pretty dramatic loss. And if, like me, you're Welsh and you support teams in red, then dramatic losses are something you'll have got used to recently. These are the results for the men's rugby team back to August 2023. A decent World Cup aside, it's been a disaster with a record-breaking losing streak. In fact, before last weekend's victory over Japan in Cardiff, it had been 2 years and 3 months since Wales won at home. Even with an 8-month break, we've had 15 Data Bytes between those 2 home wins. But maybe that win over Japan will build some momentum before our next match this Saturday. Let's go back to our Caerphilly chart. Let's take it back to 1900 with the East Glamorganshire constituency that preceded it. The Liberals' success in 1906 is off the charts because they were unopposed, by the way. Now, Wales have played this weekend's opponents 37 times to date. That is 1 dot for each match. Those opponents are New Zealand, the famous All Blacks. And if we turn those dots the colour of the winning team, you'll see Wales have only ever beaten them 3 times, and not since 1953. Maybe this weekend will finally bring another win. I'm feeling confident. Now, this is our last Data Bites of the year, which means it's the last one before Christmas. And last Christmas, I gave you my chart. The only good pie chart, where I investigated whether Christmas was indeed getting earlier by searching Twitter/X for the earliest photo of mince pies on sale. You can see it has been getting earlier, 22nd of August last year. This year, I gave myself the gift of avoiding Twitter/X and searched Blue Sky for the first mince pies instead. So do we think the first mince pies on Blue Sky this year were earlier or later than the 22nd of August? Hands up if you think they were earlier. And hands up if you think they were later. Slightly more for later. How about now? It was the 8th of August, and there is the proof. Morrison's, August the 8th, 2025. Now, if that's not enough evidence that Christmas is getting earlier, even my Is Christmas Getting Earlier analysis is getting earlier. But enough of Christmas, back to the present. Present? No. So, we have 4 brilliant speakers for you tonight. First up, joining us virtually, and due an apology for those rugby stats, is Stephanie Howarth, Chief Statistician at the Welsh Government, on Stats Wales Reimagined, a journey of data, design and delivery. We'll be back in the room for our second speaker, Penny Babb, from the Office for Statistics Regulation, back for her second Data Bites on the new Code of Practice for Statistics. Our third speaker is Martina Vauban from the Greater London Authority on the Data for London Library. And our final speaker tonight, and of 2025, is Michelle Waters from the Office for National Statistics on the Census 2031 topic consultation and the importance of gathering user insight to shape the next census in England and Wales. If you'd like to be the first to know about Data Bites in 2026, sign up for our newsletter. Go to bit.ly/pddatabytes, all lowercase, where you'll also find video, audio, slides and much more on previous events. If you work for a public sector organisation and would like to speak or know someone who should, come and speak to me afterwards or email events@public.digital. And if you'd like to show your support for Data Bites, tell a friend, especially if they work in the public sector, or share something you hear tonight on social media. There'll be video, audio and slides available for you to share in the next few days. That's more than enough from me. Our first speaker tonight is Steph. So good evening, Cardiff. This is London calling.
Good evening, London. So this is Cardiff, despite my backdrop looking very much like Aberystwyth. Hopefully you can see my slides all okay. So I will kick off.
Excellent.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Steph. I'm Chief Statistician at the Welsh Government. I'm going to tell you a bit about Stats Wales. If you don't know what Stats Wales is, it's the open data service. It's home of official data for Wales. It's got a really broad spectrum of users, from public media, public bodies, government, academia, students, and it's a really popular service as well. We have about 280,000 users a year. But despite being a really popular service, we know that it's nearing the end of its life in its current form. So this is what the service used to look like. It's very purple. It's been in this iteration since around 2012. You can navigate, you can see down the side there, to different data sets through a list of topics. And when you find your way onto a data set, this is a bit of what a data set looks like. So this is one on NHS waiting times. You can filter the data, you can sort it, you can drag and drop some of those categories so that you can move them around and change the layout of the table. I think at the time it launched, it was probably pretty cutting edge, but now it looks and feels a bit outdated, and it's based on really legacy technology, which means it's really hard to maintain. So we did a discovery project to think about the future direction of the service. The good news is that we found that some things were working really well with the service, and it was broadly meeting its core aims. People knew it was the place to come for data that's specific to Wales. It covered a really wide variety of topics about things that affect people in Wales, and important for a bilingual nation, it's available in English and Welsh. But unfortunately, we also found that there were quite a lot of pain points and that these outnumbered the good things. Our users weren't really having a great experience. They told us it was hard to navigate the service and find the data they wanted. They had frustrations with the lack of data standards and the fact that the service wasn't accessible. And it wasn't just our users who were having a problem either. Our statisticians were telling us that when they're preparing the data sets, they're really hard to build. The system is inefficient. It's really hard to correct your errors. You often have to start again. And that the service itself was often falling over, which is not particularly helpful when you've got a really pressing deadline to meet. So the recommendation from our discovery then was to create a new service to make Welsh statistical data available more easily, that service should focus on meeting core user needs, and it should be delivered in a phased approach using agile methods. So as we went about doing this, we really wanted to create a modern, sustainable, future-proof service to access data about Wales. And we've been guided by the Digital Service Standard for Wales. So that's the 3 headings there. It's about meeting user needs, creating digital teams, and using the right technology. And underneath each of those 3 headings, there are more detailed standards as well, like designing services in English and Welsh, having a multidisciplinary team, working in the open. And these are things that we've really tried to embody in our way of working throughout the development of this service so that it really does meet user needs in the best way. But this is a session about data, so let's talk data. Some of this might get a bit nerdy, but I think I'm probably in a safe space to have that kind of conversation amongst friends, I hope. Our discovery, one of the key themes that came from it was frustrations with data inconsistencies, that lack of standardization. And that can create a perception that the data is poor quality, even when that might not be the case. As a particular example, who knew there were so many different ways you could spell Rhondda Cynon Taf, which is one of our largest local authorities. Some add hyphens, some capitalize, some have one F, some don't. So those are the kind of frustrations that users were having about standardization. We spent a lot of time during the alpha and private beta phases working on some of these parts of the service that many users won't ever see, so that we can try and improve the data quality for users. So we've implemented lots of things that aim to improve the standardization and validation of the data in the service. As an example, if you have a data set that has a reference period, so it might be a quarter, or it might be a calendar year, a financial year, an academic year, there is a pre-selected list of time periods that our statisticians, when they are uploading the data sets, have to select from. So they're consistently used across the same all data sets in the service. So we've started with standardizing our time periods. Geography is next. So there will be single lookups for local authorities. So you've got the same local authority names in English and Welsh, the same codes, same for health boards, any of those other standard geographies. So we're really bringing a standardized approach to how we prepare the data and make it available to our users. We've also introduced things like consistent shorthand symbols. So we've based this on the government's analysis function recommended approach. So this will be symbols for things like when a data item is not applicable or is suppressed for confidentiality reasons. And we're now using those consistent symbols across all our data sets. So they have the same meaning no matter what data set you look at, which wasn't always the case in the previous service. And we've also tried to introduce some standardization and automation to our approach to data revisions as well. So if a statistician is preparing a data set for the service in the background will compare their old data set with the new one, identify those changes and mark them with a little R to show they're revised. So that's easier for our statisticians to prepare data sets, and it's also more consistent in how revisions are marked across our whole site. That means it's making it easier for our users, we hope, to use the data, whether they're interacting with the service manually or using an API or an AI service to access the data set. And this is an example of what the new service looks like. You can see it's clearly marked as a beta service with a yellow banner at the top and a way to give us your feedback. If you're trying it out, we really do want your feedback. And My first impression is it just looks much more like a Welsh Government service than our previous site. So it's much more consistent look and feel with other ways you might interact with information about the Welsh Government. You can navigate data sets by searching through topics. You can view, filter, sort data sets, read the metadata, download it, and access it via an API. I've got the link at the end, so I really encourage you to have a play around with it and give us your feedback. I thought I would end then with some things that we've learned. So we've amassed a huge amount of learning about who uses data and how, and I've picked out 3 key lessons to share with you all. We really need to be driven by user needs and user insights, but to do that, you need to hear from your users. And sometimes it can be quite challenging to recruit particular groups of users, like Welsh speakers, people with access requirements, people in the third sector or the general public who might be quite time poor. So we've had to think creatively about how we involve those users in the service. We've also learned that our users have a really vast range of data expertise, and that means they want very different ways to be able to navigate and access data. Some want the raw data, some want to be able to look at tables of summary data, some want visualizations. And if you're delivering a new service iteratively, chances are you're not going to meet all those needs straight away. And I think that leads on to the final point, that when you're introducing a new kind of service like this, it's going to be hard no matter what, and it might initially make people's lives harder. And if I'm being honest, although we've tried to do everything in the right way using the right digital standards, some people really don't like the new service yet. And I think that's probably because it's not meeting everyone's needs yet, because we don't have all the features that everyone will want. And people have to invest a bit of time in learning to use a new service. So I think as creators of new services for people to access data, we have to manage those expectations and involve them and tell them what's coming next. I'm really proud of the new Stats Wales service. I think it gives us a really good platform to build on lots of new things we want to do and try. So I encourage you to try out the service. Tell us what you think, because this is just the start.
Thank you very much, Steph. Excellent. We now have 8 minutes for questions. If you're in the room, you can put your hand up. Please tell us who you are if you can. Remember, we are on the record. Please wait for the mic, and please do keep your questions short, as the timer will start with the first question. The link is bit.ly/databytes60 if you would like to ask them via Slido and you're not there already. But I'm going to come into the room for the first question. Who would like to ask the first question of Steph tonight? Got one right down at the front.
Hi, I'm Martina. I work for the GLA. So when you...
I think you will need to take the mic. Sorry, Martina.
Thank you very much. Hiya. When you release this version, are there any features that this version now doesn't have that the previous version did, and how did you decide to release it without bits that people had before?
Yeah, that's been the really big challenge. So you can't do things like build your own data table. So it's largely viewing a data set at the moment rather than something that's got kind of columns and rows. And it was a really big decision about whether we release now or whether we wait and do it when that feature is available. But we thought there was probably a better value in getting people familiar with the service to start with, and then trying to explain that we're iterating and building on that. But I think my big lesson learned is we perhaps didn't do that well enough, and people expect that version of the service to be the final version. So there's definitely a lesson learned there in how you communicate delivering a service in an agile way.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go online for the next question. This is from Anonymous. Good evening to you, Anonymous. They ask, are you using any metadata standards?
Oh, we are. And this is where I show my lack of knowledge, because I can't remember what specifically this is what we are using here, but we did, as part of the discovery, look at a range of different metadata standards that were available. And we use our data as well to service trusted research environments. So we try to make sure we're being consistent in how we display our metadata, so that we don't have to shape it in different places, in ways in different places. So I can't remember what the specifics are, but we did look into what the different options were available, so to try and cover off what we think user needs are.
Great, thank you. We're back in the room. We've got a hand up over there.
Thank you. Alex Blanford, Public Digital. I'm really interested in this piece of standardization stuff. So when you've been going on a journey to kind of create standardization for entities from your perspective, have you had any successes with federating those standardised sort of, you mentioned names of local authorities. Have you sort of had success federating those out to other users and other sort of public bodies as well?
So we're trying to use things that already exist. So there's quite a good, geography data catalogue, largely run by ONS. So the aim is that we should be using things that other parts of the public sector are using as well, or there's a good case to use them. We're probably not always the best example of doing that ourselves internally at the moment. So some of this has been a bit of a learning curve to get our own statisticians used to that as well. But hopefully by starting with those kind of things that everyone is agreed on are important, like time periods and geography, they're things that we can make a good case for other public bodies using as well. It's not just the Welsh Government who publishes on this platform. So the Welsh Revenue Authority and MEDA, who's our tertiary education body, they are going to be using a service as well. So that's particularly important in making sure that across these different organisations we're using the same standards.
Thanks. I'm going to go online for the next question, which is from Anonymous. Might be the same one, might be a different one, who knows. How mature is your API and what type of APIs do you use?
Oh, so I am not the person to ask the technical question to, but you can go on to Stats Wales. You'll see there's a little banner that says access the API. It's run through Swagger. I don't know the technical details of it, but we are very happy to receive feedback if there are particular needs that aren't being met at the minute, because it's still new. There's still loads of things we could be doing differently in this, and I really, really do want people to fill in that form and give us your feedback as well.
Brilliant, thanks. We've got a question down at the front. I'll come to you next.
Hi, I'm Michelle Waters from ONS. I wondered what you had done to support users using the new system around training or videos, or kind of what have you provided to them?
So we've been using the digital and data blog as a way of kind of communicating what's coming with the service, getting users familiar with what might be coming. We don't have training or videos on there yet, but that is definitely something that we want to be able to do. And it's something that users have mentioned as well. We've tried to involve users in the research and the testing to make it as simple to use as possible. But there are definitely a case for being able to have extra resources available. So they're all the things we've got kind of built into the roadmap of what will come next.
Kristen from, is this on? Okay, it's Kristen from Apolitical, and I'm also interested actually in the user needs piece. And I was just wondering if there was anything that surprised you from your user needs exercise, or anything that you weren't expecting to see.
The thing that always proves most controversial is visualizations. Like, do people want to use visualizations in the service or not? It came out quite low in our list of user needs, but there is a user need there. But I think that's because that user need is maybe better met through other things, like where we produce our stats reports with the narratives and the charts in them. But it remains one of the things I keep thinking, well, should we have visualizations in the service or not? And the other thing that really struck me is just the vast scale of our users. There are so many different types of users, and like I said, that creates a real challenge in how you meet those needs. Whose needs do you prioritize first, because you can't do everything at once, but it shows how many people are really interested in data and want to use it for whether they're very big significant national decisions or their own kind of personal decisions as well.
Thanks. I'm going to go online for the next question, which is, are any more sensitive data available through the service, or is it just aggregate data?
It is just aggregate data. So some of that can include very small counts in some cases. So sometimes there are data items that we disclose and suppress in some way. That could be, a single pupil of a particular background in a school, for example. But generally, it's a service that's used for aggregate data.
Great, thanks. I'm going to come back in the room for the next question. Any more hands going up? I've got one just there.
Hi, I'm Abby from Policy and Practice. We work with just over half of the local authorities in Wales at the moment. I was just wondering, you talked a lot about kind of prioritisation and what features you prioritised first. Were there any particular kind of user groups you had in mind that you're interested in kind of using this data more, or any particular use cases that kind of helped you with that prioritisation?
I mean, it's funny you mentioned local authorities, because they are one of our big users, and We have, a very active group of local authorities. The value of being Wales is that we're very small. You can get all 22 local authorities in a room together, so I can get their data people in one place, and they can tell me, what it is they want to use the service for, and they do very vociferously. So I think they are a group that we've definitely prioritised because they make such big use of the service, and we have good connections with them. But I think the challenge has been to try and prioritise the other types of user groups. I feel like the one user group that probably got the rough end of the deal is the more lay user, in terms of the service at the moment. The kind of features that they want are the things that will come later, but you can't have those features until you've got the sort of fundamental things in place that are there at the moment.
Brilliant. That brings us almost perfectly to time. So, Steph, thank you very much indeed.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
We're going to come back in the room for our second speaker tonight, and that's Penny.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody, and in the room and also online. Thanks so much for the opportunity to come and take part in Data Bytes today. I work at the Office for Statistics Regulation, and we're the regulator for official statistics across the UK. We set the standards for all producers to follow through our code of practice. And I'm delighted to have this opportunity to introduce you to our new edition of the code. In seeing the list of speakers for today, I was struck by the fact that the code actually connects us all. It's the invisible wiring, if you like, between us. Steph, you've just heard from Welsh Government talking about Stats Wales sharing official statistics. Martina and the GLA are part of our TQV community. GLA is a member of our opt-in scheme for applying the code, and in fact is actually one of our earliest adopters from back at the start of the scheme in 2018. And Michelle and ONS are part of our code community as well as official stats producers, with Michelle speaking about a key issue strengthened in this third edition of the code around involving users. But what is the code about, and why should you care? Ethical frameworks are based on core principles like honesty and fairness. They're structured guides for decision making, and they may promote trustworthiness through integrity and professional competence, and foster a sense of accountability and transparency. And the code is an ethical framework, and it covers all of these things through our core principles. TQV stands for trustworthiness, quality and value. And these are the core principles of the code. And they help ensure that stats are produced with integrity, are of appropriate quality, and meet the needs of society. The code emphasises the importance of accountability, transparency and impartiality, and being open and responsive to feedback, providing a safe environment for concerns to be raised, and a learning culture for improving what and how you work. It provides a comprehensive package of guidance about how to put principles into practice. So the code is an ethical framework, but it's actually more than that. It's also a call to action. A key change that we made in strengthening the code is to make it actionable and direct. And we've done it through our new code structure. So TQV are the core principles at the heart of the code. And we then have 10 simple direct principles that unpack TQV to show what it looks like to put them into practice. And these are the critical starting point for using the code and are helpful for anyone who is looking to be guided by it. And then we have 2 sets of standards that apply the principles to the essential areas of practice. And we have 10 standards aimed at official statistics, and 3 standards are around the public use of statistics data and wider analysis, which are relevant to anyone communicating using stats. And then we unpack those standards in detailed lists of practices that show how to work in ways that are in line with the core principles. So this is our new structure for the code of practice. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole detail of the code, you'll be relieved to know, but I do want to show you the code principles. So these unpack trustworthiness, quality and value into clear actions that speak plainly about what TQV mean in practice, such as show integrity and trustworthiness, be rigorous in quality, be clear in value. And the principles provide a steer on how and a set of do's and don'ts for each one. For example, for the first one, show integrity, do present and use data and statistics objectively, being impartial and professional. Don't withhold or misrepresent data or statistics due to political or commercial influence. So each of the 10 principles have this kind of pairing of do's and don'ts to help steer you in how to think about the principle. And then we're applying those principles into the set of standards, particularly for the standards for official statistics. The 10 principles each have a standard that's applying it to the specific area of practice. And each standard has a must statement. It's a what. What must producers do? Producers must act with integrity, working and communicating in honest and objective and professional ways, and challenging misuse. And then they each have a why. Why does this matter? Why bother with this? So that the public can have confidence. And each of the standards have that why, starting with so that the public can have confidence, and then in why with a specific standard. And then we unpack them into the house, into the list of practices. And these are aimed at official stats producers, but in actual fact, they can be helpful for any analyst who's looking to dig in more deeply around what it means to show trustworthiness, quality, and value. Now, the code is more than an ethical framework, and it's actually more than a call to action. Often codes of practice are seen as rule books to be pulled off the shelf in times of emergency. But the real power of the code is how it can help you in your everyday work. It's a thinking tool. Applying TQV helps you ensure that statistics and analysis are produced with integrity, are of appropriate quality and meet the needs of society. They each provide helpful lenses to focus on what is important in any situation. And we encourage you to think TQV. So in any particular situation, reflect on trustworthiness. How can you show that you're worthy of trust? And for that situation, then think about quality. What are the quality issues that you need to address? And also think about value. And as you do, it will help reveal to you how you can be thinking around improving the value of the work that you're doing. It could be who to engage with. It could be how do you ensure that you're really achieving the full value of the work. So, there we go, that's got it this time. The code is here for you. It provides a strong ethical framework. It gives clear direction on how to act, and it's a mindset that can help you and your team every day. So why not join the TQV community? Join our community of practice, and you can find out more about it. You can click on follow the QR code to go and have a look at the code, and we'd encourage you to dive in, have a look at the guidance, and do let us know if you'd like to be applying TQV. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Penny. Again, we will be taking questions. You can put your hands up in the room. You can use Slido, which is bit.ly/databyte60, all lowercase, if you're not there already. Who would like to ask the first question of Penny? Got one there. Wait for the mic.
Hello, thanks for the presentation. My name is Kevin Keith and I'm chair of the UK Open Government Network. Open government's a culture of governance based on the principles of transparency, accountability and participatory governance. I know about the challenge of trying to turn principles into action. How difficult was that? I think it's a really interesting framework. And how will you evaluate the success of the code?
Oh, great question. We actually introduced the framework TQV, Trustworthiness, Quality and Value, in our second edition of the code. That was the first time that we began to use it. And I think in a way, it's interesting seeing the difference between launching Code 2 and now launching Code 3. With Code 2, I had to explain, along with Director General Ed Humferson of OSR, we had to go out and explain to people, what do we mean by this? Now, 7, 8 years on from that, so many people are understanding and applying the framework. So in a sense, it's been through the doing. So it's not been having to be quite so much about right now, about what are we doing to train people in understanding it. It's actually been through that period of time with the community that we've been working with official stats producers, with other people who've been interested in thinking about the code. Actually, that the thinking tool is the critical element. It's turning it away from seeing it as a rule book and how is it actually helpful for you now? And I got to say, having 3 words, simple everyday words, and understanding the meaning of what is this all about is the critical difference. So keeping it simple, keeping it relevant, and help it be applicable in people's work has worked for us. And I got to say, so many other people are actually doing all the work for us now in actually talking about the code.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go on.
Sorry, there was one bit about impact. Sorry, I didn't. Is that okay?
How will you measure?
Yeah. I think in a way, one of the things partly is growing our community. And for me, that's one of the big ones. In a way, official stats producers, they're trapped. You know? They have to do it. But growing the idea of TQV much more widely across analysts is going to be one of our big things to see. Are we really helping people see the benefit in their work? And I think it's the idea of serving the public good. It's not just within official stats. It's completely any kind of setting. People are producing something of value to society, and how can we help make sure they're actually achieving that? And so that for us, that could be one measure, would be through the TQV community itself.
Great, thank you. We've got loads of questions coming in online, so I'm going to go to Slido next. James, good evening to you. James asks, how would you measure public confidence in the code? Would you be using any metrics to measure that?
That's a good question as well. I think that we have had a public confidence in official stats survey, so that could be one way of doing it. So I think partly it's through the engagement that we have through. So in a sense, it's a good question. If you're thinking about the general public, it probably would be through using that survey, which I think is an omnibus survey that NatCen has been running. Very often it's through our engagement and trying to reach out to different kind of community groups. And it could also be through the kind of reactions that we're getting through key partners. So the Royal Statistics Society, those kinds of groups can often give us a sense of whether or not we are missing the mark in some important area. And we've got other groups of user groups from across different kinds of sectors that do give us a bit of a check. So I think it could be both through that kind of engagement as well as through thinking around something like the PCOS survey.
Great, thank you. Let's come to the room for the next question. Otherwise, I'll go back online. Anonymous asks, who should see the code, but you've struggled to engage?
Ooh. That's a tricky question in a way, because I feel that we have been pretty successful actually getting all kinds of different groups to speak with us. I think the one area that, I mean, going back to the public, that's actually one area where I think it would be really exciting to try and push further. And I think there are some key groups that we have worked with in the past that could provide us a bit of an opening. I'm thinking of groups like Sense About Science, where you've got members of the public really trying to understand important aspects of analysis or data that is really speaking into their lives. And I think it would be really great to try and help them to see how the code can actually help them. And I think there's some things around thinking about information and using it in appropriate ways for your own sake, for how can you weigh up kind of the evidence that you're looking at and make smart choices. So that would be one area.
Thanks. Anyone in the room with a question? online is very busy tonight, so I'll go back to them. Tom King, evening to you, Tom, asks, the new Ethics and Integrity Commission will be promoting codes of conduct in all public bodies. How can professionals find synergies between the two frameworks? I suppose there's a wider question building on some of the earlier questions as well, which is there are so many different ethical codes, guidelines, frameworks out there. How do you help people bring them all together?
I think in a way, partly it's through the engaging and raising awareness. I had the opportunity of taking part in a session around ethics with the Nolan, it was a celebration of the Nolan principles. And it struck me at that point, in a way, we were pretty unknown in the community of organisations that were involved in this kind of space. So I do feel that there's an area there where we can push further in raising awareness, because data and statistics are critical across the public sector. And having confidence in how that information is being handled is really important, not just for the analysts and how they're handling it. And one of the key developments is in our standards for the public use of stats data and wider analysis. And I think pushing it maybe in those areas will actually raise awareness as well, that responsibility is not just on analysts about how to handle it. So I think that could be an area. So reaching out with those kinds of other groups and engaging further.
Thanks. Anyone in the room with a question? Otherwise, I'm going to ask one, which is, you've mentioned user engagement quite a bit. I know there was I know there was a user engagement toolkit published alongside the code as well. I wondered if you wanted to tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, we were able to work with Connected by Data and with Jenny Tenson and Gavin and colleagues. And it was a really fruitful workshop that we ran. It brought together analysts and community groups and experts in public involvement and engagement. It's back in February, and it's led to a new toolkit, which I have nicknamed the PI toolkit, because it's public involvement and engagement. You can find it on the code website, go via the code, and it's a great tool. Lots of useful tips, great examples that have come from people's experiences working with different kind of community groups. And yeah, we're indebted to Jenny and to Gavin for the work that the team have done in helping us actually form this toolkit. So encourage everybody, go and look at the PI toolkit.
Thank you. Who knew that pies would feature so prominently tonight as well? Well, Penny, thank you very much indeed.
No, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
And our third speaker tonight is Martina.
Hello. Hi everyone, I'm Martina. I work for the Greater London Authority and I am head of data for London there. And really my raison d'etre is to make it easier for people to share and use data across London to solve city problems. But to start you off, because I don't think many of you work in local government, I'll give you a bit of context of why doing data work in London is so great. And that's partially because London is quite an amazing patchwork of organisations. Turns out we have more boroughs than Wales has local authorities, and all of them have their own data systems. All of them are like little places where you can pilot things out. We also have incredible institutions who are willing to collaborate with us, from academic institutions through to think tanks, through to central government experts helping us out. And finally, we really have an appetite for trying new things and some of the human infrastructure to try and get stuff off the ground. Things like innovation districts, things like public sector innovation groups, stuff like that. And all that came together already 15 years ago to build the London Data Store, which is our open data portal. I do sympathise with Seth when it's, it probably could use a bit of a refresh, but it is still very good at being an open data portal where people can find data about London, again, partially to do their actual research about London and to prove things you can do with data. But quite aside from the practical data projects, Data for London also thinks about how we can be not just trusted, but trustworthy, right? Very similar to the kind of code of practice thinking. What are the things we need to do to engage? And so one of the things we have set up is something called the Data for London Advisory Board, acknowledging that patchwork and acknowledging the fact that London is such a combination of different sorts of institutions. Of course, it includes the London public sector, TfL, Fire, Police. In fact, Amy Smith, who's now the Chief Data Officer for Government, was on my board until last month. But it also includes industry, it includes big commercial tech companies, and includes academia as well. So that's the kind of engagement we're doing on the institutional side, but we're also really interested in what Londoners have to say. And so this year was our third year of London Data Week, where we've grown from about 18 events in the first year up to more than 50 this year. We had 2,000 people from all across London turn up and talk data. And it got very nerdy, I'll give you that, a bit like Steph was saying, but it also included a musical performed by several actors that the LSE had got together and to tell people about the actual cycle underneath AI. And these kind of more artistic approach to try and engage Londoners with these issues is really important to us. But what do we actually specifically need to solve? So the pain points that we still see are actually very similar to the ones Steph covered. So in 2021 and reiterated in 2024, the Mayor committed to fixing the plumbing for data in London. And we know that there are three things that are really difficult right now. That's discoverability of data. It's data sharing, where that data isn't open, right? So if we can't open the data, sharing it with individual institutions, and enabling collaboration. And some of that collaboration happens through human infrastructure, some of the organizations I already mentioned, but some of it happens through data standards, harmonization, technical stuff. And that's where we come in. So we have started down this path. This is a lot of work. And so this is going to take bits and pieces. And the first piece of this puzzle that we're really excited to share with you is the Data for London library. Because what we want to do is solve that first problem, discoverability. Given that we have such a patchwork of organizations, all of whom have their own data, at the moment, we are wasting time finding it. We are missing out on partnerships because there may be small organizations. We are duplicating efforts by recollecting stuff that already exists somewhere in London. And so the Data for London library will let you search all city data all in one place. And the kind of philosophy here is we're trying to connect and not collect the data. And that goes to show by how we're working. So the first collaboration, the first contributors to the library goes from boroughs through to wider public sector, as well as organizations like UK Power Networks, commercial entities operating in London. And rather than try and create one big bucket where all the data's going to live, which is never going to work, we pull in all the metadata. What is it you have? Tell us about it. The reason that's exciting is partially because it builds on this open data culture we already have. London has this 15-year history of open data being shared with everybody. But not everything can be open data. But there is very little that can't be open metadata, where the fact that you have it is sensitive enough not to share the fact that you have it. And so what we're trying to create is somewhere where we know what everybody has, so that you build the right partnerships, so that you have the right people in the room, when you then set up your data sharing agreements or your disclosure agreement or whatever legal avenues you then need to share it across. The other reason is that we reckon that the kind of data maturity you need to contribute to a metadata registry like this is not something everyone can already meet. There are lots of organizations who really want to invest in their data but don't know where to start. And so for us, starting with good kind of internal cleansing, information registers, all of these things that we already should have, but people struggle to put together, we are trying to be the reason to invest. I'll therefore preempt the question I know is going to come back, which is the metadata standards one. We're asking everybody to adhere to Dublin Core standard as we do this, which is reasonably simple, but already has been quite tricky to achieve. Now, so this is what the library is all about. The London Data Store will stay up in parallel for quite some time because of that open data aspect of it, but we want to go further. So where do we go from here? And like I said, we've got these sort of multiple problems to solve, and we thought, let's solve one at a time. So the Data for London library allows you to search things. we know that the next thing people are going to want to do is share things. And so the next module that we're working on now is all about permissions management, access management. And we hope that the maturity that comes from getting your metadata in order will allow people to engage more fruitfully with all these next pieces of work. So that's where we are. Please do go have a little look at the library. We're onboarding more and more data sets as we go. We hope to bring on board a big chunk of energy data sets that we've already collated in the GLA. That should be coming out in the next few months. But if you've seen the data store before, that's about 1,200 data sets. This is now 5,000 already. So we're very keen to see what people think. Very keen to hear as well where you think we should prioritize next features. That's why I asked Steph that question about what, how do you pick what to do? So very curious to hear what people think. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. We'll go to questions. A reminder, you can put your hands up if you're in the room. You can also ask them on Slido, which is bit.ly/databyte60, all lowercase if you're not already there. Who'd like to ask the first question of Martina? I can hold a silence, audience. I will wait. The hand has emerged.
Thank you. I have like 5 questions, so Gavin, if you ever need an extra one. How are you I assume, and tell me if I'm wrong here, that if you're kind of holding this curation of lots of other different public authorities, you go off somewhere else and then you might be hit by their registration wall, or you might be hit by their kind of sign up to, email. Obviously, principles of open data don't apply to every data set, but how are you handling the kind of whiplash of dealing with however many different public authorities' idiosyncratic approach to usability as you jump between different things to provide some sort of unity?
Fantastic question. I think that is really core to operating within London, where everybody does, they have their own responsibilities as data owners, so they need to take those seriously, and we can't sort of overrule those. So what we do is where the data is open, we link you straight where the open data lives. So you just, there's no intermediate stages. You don't have to deal with other people's interfaces. We do that part for you. Where the data isn't open and we're allowing you kind of to search things that are inside organizations, we point you to whatever their current front door is. The funny thing is, because there's been such uneven approaches to this, that is quite a wide range of things. And frankly, we are the decider of how much of a barrier is going to be too much of a barrier. So when I speak to organizations who are keen to contribute, delightful, please come talk to me. But that's the first question I ask. It's like, okay, so let's say I want to access this thing. Can I realistically, within a month, get in? And if I can't, I'm not listing it. And those kinds of lines, of course, those will evolve over time. And their lines will probably be different between different sorts of organizations. But we are acknowledging that this is going to be a slightly strange user journey until we can do the access management on people's behalf. And that's going to take 11 maturity, it's going to take time. So if you do find yourself in front of a funny page, that's been my criteria. Can I get in a month realistically? Then I will send you to wherever they tell me to send you.
Great, thank you. We've got a couple of questions, I'll come to you next, but we've got a couple of questions online about harmonisation, one of which picks up on that, which is Jack H, evening to you, Jack, says, harmonising approvals and enabling access to data linked or drawn from multiple sources is hard. What incentives do data holders have to cede control? And the other harmonisation question is, are you planning to look at data harmonisation across London boroughs, thinking about the definitions work that Steph mentioned on geography, for example?
Excellent question. Okay, so the incentives are interesting here. There's absolutely, I think, lots of incentives to be risk averse. I love talking about other people's excellent work. So I am standing on the shoulders of the London Office for Technology Innovation, who have set up something called the Information Governance Group for London. Google it. If you're a nerd like me, it's excellent. And they have spent the past 4 years building the trust you need to overcome that risk aversion. And so they have gone from a London where it took 6 months at least to get a multilateral data sharing agreement done to maybe 6 weeks. That is still not nothing, but in a system this complex, you probably don't want it to be much faster than that because you get a little bit concerned about the quality of the decisions being made. So The incentive, I think, now is that collaborative working where people see the resource benefits from doing things together, where each data protection officer trusts the other ones in London to look after their data properly, which means they don't have to spend quite as many hours worrying about it. So that's the ceding of control is not really what we're doing. We're essentially trusting each other to respect the controls that we have. The data harmonization point is a tricky one. At the moment, I don't touch the data. So I try not to make that jump, partially because the GLA doesn't really have a mandate often to directly touch the data. So instead, we have a whole parallel work stream around good data citizenship, which includes things like standards, things like picking Dublin Core for everyone, kind of. And we'll keep doing that, but we'll keep doing that for specific sectors. So like I said, the energy data hub that's going to come online soon, there we have started to say, well, if you want to list it on here, it needs to adhere to these standards. And that's more likely how I'll operate, rather than trying to reach in and cleanse it. I'm probably not going to do that.
Great, thanks. Yeah. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Was it the same question, maybe? Yeah.
I think my question is sort of where the data isn't harmonised and is different, how are you sort of explaining how sort of giving the data users confidence, or explaining the limitations of where things can be brought together, or potentially, that coherence question of where things maybe can't be brought together and the challenges around that, and whether there's any confusion around, among the data users. Just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, funnily enough, this is a bigger risk when people start bringing lots of open data together than it is for the private data sharing. So the private data sharing side of it, there's probably quite a lot of governance that goes on before anyone gets their hands on anything. So I'm less worried about it there. I'm more worried, funnily enough, about a world where 5 separate boroughs publish almost the same data set, and then people add them all together and draw strange conclusions. The thing is, that risk already exists. It just takes more Google searches to get there at the moment. So I feel like I'm not creating a new problem here. And frankly, bringing it all together exposes that much more clearly. Because if you now start searching, let's take an example. Let's take air quality. Air quality is a really tricky one to harmonize. Academic labs help us to do it. Having them all in a single search and then showing them that you're all not quite measuring the same indicators is the first time they're all put next to each other in quite that way. So it's exposing the lower quality places and thereby creating the impetus to harmonize, which previously there wasn't really. But yeah, is that incentive to invest that I'm hoping to create.
There are some great questions online, but I'm going to use my chair's prerogative to ask the final question. Let's say someone else were developing a data library of some description. It might be on a national scale, say. What lessons would you want to share with them based on your experience so far?
A lot of the things people have asked me questions about. The incentive structure is a really big one. Who are you going to get and why? And that requires being quite opinionated about who is core to your mission. So for us, it is really important to us that London boroughs are able to participate. And so I am willing to lower some of the barriers to entry for them, because I know that as soon as they start contributing, there's much more reason to improve. Whereas my barrier to entry for big commercial entities is going to be much higher, because I want them to be easy to get into, good harmonized data, etc. So that's a really big one. The other one is be trustworthy. More than just being trusted. I think there's something really important about designing your governance in such a way that even if no one questions you, you still have a good answer for it. And then finally, the citizen engagement. So for us, London Data Week is, we try to get everyone to do their engagement then, because we know that people are going to get on a bus and go from event to event. And we have definitely put some sort of half thought through ideas out there and got some really valuable stuff. Show your workings and have people tell you you're wrong early, we have found really helpful. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Martina, thanks very much indeed. And if you want to learn more about what GLA has been doing with data, I think we had Craig Campbell talking about the High Streets data service at a previous Data Bytes, and I think we had Theo Blackwell and Loti as well presenting during the pandemic. Somebody did ask, when is the musical theatre special of Data Bytes? We'll think about that. And some idiot did present a data game show during London Data Week in 2024, so you can seek the data game out on the Open Data Institute website if you so wish. That brings us to our final speaker tonight. That's Michelle.
So, yeah, hello, I'm Michelle Waters from the Office for National Statistics. Thanks so much for inviting me today. So the Office for National Statistics has recently launched the topic consultation for the Census 2031 in England and Wales, and your input is vital. Why? Because the census needs to deliver data that truly matters, and to do that, we need to understand how you use data, why it's important to your work, and the impact your work has on society. Your feedback will help shape the next census and ensure that it's meeting the greatest public good that it can. So please do take part. I've got 2 minutes paper here. So for over 2 centuries, the census has captured how a society lives and changes and has really focused on the most important issues of the time. It began in 1801 to address fears of famine. In 1911, sorry, it asked about women's occupations for the first time, and many women used the census as a way to protest for the right to vote. In 1921, it recorded orphanhood after war and pandemic. In 1931, Census responded to mass unemployment, revealing the hardest hit industries, including such as mining. So in the most recent census in 2021, it went digital first, with new questions on gender identity, sexual orientation and armed force service. Each census has its own kind of story of its time, and now we have the chance to shape the next chapter. So today, Census is really vital, a snapshot of England and Wales, giving us the most complete picture. And why does that matter? Because the data shapes decisions on how billions of pounds is spent for public services, school places, emergency services, hospital beds. It helps the private sector make decisions, and it helps charities plan for the needs of its communities. After the 2015 topic consultation, Census 2021 introduced questions about who had served in the UK Armed Forces, and the Royal British Legion's quote here highlights the impact this data had, enabling organisations to target services, support families, and identify areas of disadvantage. And Census 2031, we want to keep evolving, responding to society's changes and providing the data that matters most. So why are we having a consultation? I've told you some of it, but we do already have an extensive knowledge of user data's needs built through ongoing engagement, such as through the 2023 consultation on the future population and migration statistics in England and Wales. And the new consultation really is building on that foundation to shape what should be included in Census 31. As society changes, our statistics really still need to evolve and reflect new realities and emerging priorities. Census as well gives us the opportunity to go slightly wider than our traditional engagement because the use of it is wider. The topic consultation is your opportunity to tell us what you need from census data, capturing both those enduring requirements, but also meeting those needs for future challenges. Your input will help us to create that robust, inclusive evidence base to guide decisions on topic inclusion, ensuring census delivers what matters for that changing population. So we are still at the early stages of census development. Here's a roadmap which focuses on the kind of content development. We've launched the consultation, and through autumn and winter we'll be encouraging responses, seeking to have a really good representation from across sectors. We really do want everyone who uses data to feedback. We'll then quickly produce a use said summary, and in summer 2026 we'll publish detailed responses which will include what topics we think we will include, what ones we won't, or which ones we would like we're going to need to do more work on before we make that decision. And after the consultation, we'll then move to focus on question development. At this point, we're really focused on topics and less so on questions. And then topics and questions will be confirmed in secondary legislation. So the topic consultation is seeking feedback, as I say, on topics for Census 2031 in England and Wales. And we will be, in the consultation, we ask by topic, what around the user need for each of those topics. We'll be asking about all the topics that were included in Census 2021, but also two new topics we are asking about specifically, which is type of health condition, impairment and disability, and income. There's also an opportunity to request data on any new topic, and the evidence collected will be evaluated against a structured evaluation framework. Also, just to mention, you don't need to answer about every topic, but the topics that you actually use or would like to use in the future. So what information are we looking for? A really good response, which will help us when we come to evaluate it, will clearly explain why you need the data. It will provide you it will provide descriptions of your real world examples of how you use the data and the impact that has. It will identify gaps and limitations in your current data. It will suggest new topics or improvements to the existing ones, and support case with evidence or references wherever you can. Oh yeah. And we'll be evaluating responses against a structured evaluation criteria. We'll be looking at topics consistently. It supports us do that. It's very similar to the 2021 evaluation criteria, Census 2021, and we also have worked with National Records of Scotland and Northern Ireland Statistics Research Agency, who are running their consultations as well to ensure that we have that consistency across the UK. The high-level evaluation criteria is published alongside the consultation in the consultation document. If you go to the consultation page, scroll down to the bottom, there's a link, and I would encourage you to read that document before you respond, and this supports you with the information you need to respond to the consultation. But we're also going to publish a little bit more detail on that in February, with kind of more detail on the evaluation criteria once the consultation closes. So the consultation is currently open. It closes on the 4th of February. We encourage you to complete it online, but alternative forms are available, and we will then provide the full evaluation in summer 2026. As I said, we're working with the devolved nations throughout, and just a little plug for NISWA for Northern Ireland. Their consultation launched at the same time as ours, so you may want to consider completing that one as well. NOS's consultation has closed, but it's recently, so we're along the same timeline. Sorry, I'm slightly slow. So please get in touch. If you have any questions, there is the email. If you would like to support your networks completing it, we can provide you with the information to support that. Or if you just have any questions, please do reach out. So I have one question for you. If you could shape this census, what topics would you include to deliver the greatest benefit to society? Please tell us through the consultation.
Thank you very much, Michelle. So I'll ask all of you for questions from Michelle, but if you've got any answers to that question as well, please do share them. We'll come to the room first, but reminder, you can also put questions online, bit.ly/databytes60 all lowercase if you're not already there. Who would like to go first?
Everyone's tired.
Otherwise, I'll go online for the first one. Anonymous asks, will 2031 census still be restricted to the number of questions that would fit on a short paper form? And how do you decide which previous topics to drop?
So the current thinking is that there is likely still to be a need for a paper form, and therefore there are the limitations around that. The evaluation criteria but even if it doesn't have a form, there is still the respondent burden limitations. We can't ask everything, and our evaluation criteria really weighs up that user need alongside the respondent burden and quality that you'll get from a longer form. So that's how we're making that decision, based on the sort of our kind of structured evaluation criteria.
Great, thank you. Next question. Otherwise, I'm going to ask one, and you don't want that. You've got one just there. Just wait for the microphone.
Hi, I'm Kerry from Apolitical. I'm just interested in your consultation. Is there a minimum age threshold? I'm thinking about a lot of young people are really interested in social issues. Whether there's any barrier to completing the form, or whether you'd actually be encouraging that and socialising that idea more widely.
So that's really interesting. I can see it would be a sort of nice thing to do as part of a group of, I would say, we are really looking for data users, because we are looking at what the impact of that data is, and therefore sort of but I would encourage everyone who would like to complete it to complete it. I think though it's easier to complete and provide that sort of evidence of the impact that the data will make if you're a data user in working with data and able to do that. But that I would say that doesn't limit that. If there is a use and a way that data is going to support society in the future, then I would absolutely welcome that input.
Great, thank you. Next question. Got one down at the front.
To what extent do you worry about how accurately people can complete it? So if there's a question where actually we're interested in people's perceptions or people's sense of it, even if we don't have good reference data. I'm thinking back to some of the evaluation work that were happening before the last census, where it was things like self-identified gender or self-identified religion, or these kinds of places where people write in descriptions.
Yeah.
Is that already being considered now, as in how likely do we think that these are going to form big enough groups to actually be disclosable? Or are we more interested in the ultimate value if we got data that we could disclose?
So the focus at the moment is really looking at the topics, understanding that detailed need, and I think some of that would come later around thinking about how we develop the questions to meet that need. The responses we receive now, while the primary aim will be to kind of prioritise what topics need to be included, the information received through the consultation will absolutely be used to then support the question development at the next stage. And through, also within the evaluation criteria, we have other considerations, and that stage will include a lot of research with people to kind of discuss more about those categories and the question development. So it is things we are considering how we will deal with later, but it will be open to kind of programs of research to make sure those questions are able to accurately get the right responses. But I think we have had questions on things like, do we ask for opinions and things? And actually the questions are more focused on characteristics and areas where we're going to get the biggest impact and value for society because of those limitations with the question form and we cannot ask everything. So I would say we do want to look at the impact at this point, and then the next point will be developing the questions. If there is an impact, we will try and develop, and it's prioritised, we will try and develop a question that will meet that need. But going forward, those things, again, there's all these trade-offs on whether or not it's going to impact on, say, the response rates, and that will be that later stage.
Great, thanks. I asked a question earlier about the proliferation of guidance and frameworks. There's a bit of a proliferation of consultations on certain things at the moment. So I think the Government Statistical Service have got a consultation around harmonisation on ethnicity, for instance.
Yeah.
How does this overlap with that and any other sort of similar consultations there might be at the moment?
So we're working really closely with the GSS, Government Statistical Service harmonisation team. They are doing a consultation on ethnicity at the moment. And they are going to be creating the harmonised standard for ethnicity. That will be recommended to all of government statistical producers, including the censuses, and therefore my recommendation to everyone is if you use ethnic group data, please complete that one as well, because it's likely that both the census topic consultation and the ethnicity harmonisation consultation to create the standard will both feed into the data on ethnic group that will be developed for the 2031 census. Way too many dates.
Thanks. I'm going to go online for the next one. So Anonymous notes that sexual orientation was included for the first time last time round.
Yeah.
What's the response rate on voluntary topics, and what is done to help the public get why they should share that information?
I don't think I know that answer in terms of the response rate. It's not something I've looked at for quite some time. But yeah, it is important that where we feel a topic is sensitive and it might impact on the response rate of the census, then we have those voluntary questions around religion, gender identity, and sexual orientation.
Great, thank you. Anyone want to squeeze in a quick final question? We've got one just there. Just wait for the mic.
It's actually related to the last question around sensitivity and sensitive data.
Yeah.
And you mentioned one of the topics potentially being health. And I'm wondering how you are assessing how people will perceive that, giving declining levels of trust, institutional trust in particular. How do you evaluate those kind of things?
So we already have questions on general health, and for all of these questions, as I say, part of the evaluation criteria is that public acceptability, respondent burden, quality of the data that we receive. And as questions will be developed at the next stage, we will continue engaging with stakeholders to understand what really is needed, but we will also do both. For 2021, we did both quantitative and qualitative research to understand the impact of these questions, both on the sort of general public, but for those people with those identities, to really understand, because that's key. And there is a possibility, even if the data has got a really high user need, a strong user need, that it can't be implemented, and there may be and have to be alternative ways of collecting it.
Brilliant. Well, Michelle, thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thanks.
A few quick parish notices from me before I release you into the evening, or those of you in the room, to the drinks that will magically appear at the back shortly. First of all of our speakers tonight, all of our brilliant speakers, had a call to action for you. So please do check out Stats Wales, check out the Code of Practice for Statistics and the Pi toolkit alongside it. Check out the data for London Library and go and check out the consultation on the census. You'll be able to watch all of tonight's event back on YouTube or Slido. There will be a blog post with audio and slides to follow. Please do share that widely. We would love to grow the people who come to these events and grow the communities around it. This is the last Data Bytes of 2025. Very nice. Sign up at bit.ly/pddatabytes, all lowercase, to be the first to hear about the 2026 details. If you've got any thoughts about speakers, do come and talk to me afterwards or email events@public.digital. All that remains for me to say are some very big thank yous to PD for hosting, to all of you for coming, and we'll thank all of our 4 brilliant speakers with a round of applause shortly. See you all in 2026. Enjoy some mince pies. It is now seasonal to enjoy them. Have a very Merry Christmas, and please do join me in thanking our fantastic speakers tonight. Thank you all very, very much indeed.